I am not affiliated with Perone nor Montcanoyer, but I'm Ken Shapiro. Welcome to this seminar. It's my pleasure to introduce John Peters. John Peters is with the Soil Science Department here at UW-Madison, and he's also the director of the Soil and Forage Analysis Lab at Marshfield and at Madison. As such, I count John as the preeminent expert on the soils of Wisconsin. In recognition of his work here, he's been awarded quite a number of awards, including the Academic Staff Award for Excellence in Public Service, Peterson Technology Transfer Award, and in addition to all the good work he does here, he's managed to get away from campus for significant blocks of time. So between 1990 and 92, he was based in the Gambia. Does everybody know where the Gambia is? Ha! I can tell I'm with South Asians. It's a tiny little country in West Africa. And there, John was the leader of the program to upgrade their capabilities for soil analysis and soil research, renovation of their soils lab, and did research throughout that country. More recently then, he's been in India for about 2 years, starting in January of 2009. He was chief of party for a project that you see identified here, and as part of his duties, he was working with the world's largest tractor producer, which is Mahindra and Mahindra. Okay. Also with the Rajiv Gandhi Charitable Trust. Tasty Bite. How many of you know Tasty Bite? Go into the supermarket and you'll find in the exotic aisle prepackaged Indian food. They're the largest exporter of Indian food from India, and also with a small nonprofit based out of Chennai. And John will be talking with us about that experience.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's been a challenging day so far. I left at 5:30 and it took 2 hours from the Oscar Mayer plant to get over to Michael was waiting for me at the Memorial Union, so the traffic was just out. They couldn't get up the hills or something. So anyway, we'll move on. But anyway, again, pleasure to be here, and I'll try to move along and get you out of here at a reasonable time. First of all, the project that we're going to be talking about is part of the university's overall mandate and interest in international programming, but we're also put it under the umbrella of the Karana program. And I don't know how many of you are aware of Professor Karana before now, but if you aren't, this is a little bit about him. He was a member of the faculty in the 60s, won the Nobel Prize here, and he moved on to MIT, and I believe he still lives out in the Boston area. So under his leadership, but also the two leaders are here, Asim Ansari and Ken Shapiro are both here, the leaders of the Karana program, and we put this USAID program under that umbrella. So objectives of the Karana program are to provide Indian and U.S. students with experience in international work and opportunities, contributing to Indian rural development, and increase interaction between the U.S. and India and the scientific community. So again, this project fit under all those pieces. As far as the project itself, it's called PICA. They actually had a meeting on this on Tuesday, and one of us was supposed to be there, but between Ken and I, we put together a PowerPoint and just kind of discussed the end of the project. But it's a partnership for innovation and knowledge in agriculture. There was, I believe, well over 100 applicants, and 4 were selected, including the University of Wisconsin. The main objective was increasing productivity and value chain links for high-value agricultural products. And within that, our particular objectives in our project were raise yields of milk, vegetables, also field crops, increase human resource capacity. This is where we come into the Mahindra story you'll be seeing as we move along. Improve their technical support in terms of the laboratory operations, and then strengthen farmer links to outlets and supply chains. So our partners in this project, Ken mentioned them. USAID was the funding agency. Mahindra and Mahindra, he talked about all these already. Maybe the one we didn't get to on the bottom is an NGO in Chennai. He was actually instrumental in kind of originally bringing us all together. We didn't do a lot with him in the project, but he had a lot of links with Tata Corporation, which probably most of you have heard of, and that's a huge organization in India, so we did some work with them as well. Now, first I'm going to talk about the, is that too bright or you want some pictures or lights off? I mean, it's up to you. It's at an angle, it looks pretty washed out from here, but okay. Anyway, the RGCT is Rajiv Gandhi Charitable Trust. It's all about women's self-help groups. These groups are usually 10 to 12 people or so in a group. They meet all different times of the day and night. This is a picture you can probably pick me out of the crowd here somehow. This is a night meeting at a village. We're talking about just improving soil health for growing vegetables, using manures, compost, this sort of thing. But they are very dedicated people. They work 16 hours a day, easily 7 days a week on this program. And the women groups are really designed, just like it sounds, self-help. They do their own financing. They do work with health, education, agriculture, which means field crops, and then dairy. So all kinds of components, and I'm sure I'm leaving a few others out. Just a little background. I know we're going to run late, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but there's about 1/3 women in the program now from these very poor areas in Uttar Pradesh, and I'll show you where that is in a minute. And again, it started in about 2002, and the idea was to build this model that can be scaled out, into the rest of the state and into the rest of the country as well. It's a real magnet for international interest. For example, the British Prime Minister has been there. Bill Gates was there like a couple of days after I was there. Ambassadors from all countries. It's just a Gandhi name in India, and this is a very star project or program, so it draws a lot of international attention. Again, most of the people in this area are very poor. You see the numbers there, very high percent, own very small areas of land, less than half a hectare or so very small. It's challenged for rainfall and irrigation, can be very dry. It's not it cannot always count on the rainfall, so it can be a big issue. And again, it's just basically subsistence living or subsistence farming for all these women. I thought this is interesting. At least it is to me. This is the top countries in the world in terms of population. I just put the top 13. You notice, first of all, a lot of them are in Asia. But if you come down here, China first, India, which they predict will pass China in the next 15 years or so. But if you put Uttar Pradesh, which is this one state where this project is running, it would be the 5th largest country in the world just in population, and it's the size, somewhere between Minnesota and Michigan in terms of area. So it's a small area with a huge population, and again, most of the people are quite poor. This is a kind of a pictorial look at where the population density is in India. I was living here in Mumbai, which is quite dense. Needless to say, it's well over 20 million. But up here, this is the Rajiv Gandhi Trust working area, and you see this is this kind of purple color, which is, other than the metropolitan area like Delhi and a few others, it's the most densely populated areas in the country. So one of the things we worked with was composting, vermicomposting, which is using worms. These are some of the beds. They have to be kind of protected from the bottom and the top in terms of sun, and also so the worms don't go down below, so they usually have a impermeable barrier. But again, it works out fine. This is an example where a woman has had enough success where she can bag some up and sell it for a little extra income for the household. Okay, there it goes. Dairy training was a big part of it. Probably you could sum that up by saying two of the big things they worked with is improving the feed and giving more access to water. Use pictorial things like, would a person want to get a drink once a day? So you show the picture of water at different points on the clock instead of just once or twice a day. Same thing with the animals, trying to encourage more access to water. Typically animals are tethered like this with no water, so we tried to get in a situation where they could access water. It's hard to see here, but this is some green mixed in with the very crude looking rice and wheat straw as feed. So this, as you can imagine, is not going to give you much milk, but if you mix some green with it, of course, it improves the potential for milk production from that forage. This is some of the stuff I work with the training materials for the agriculture. This is just kind of pictorially how to take soil samples. This is Hindi, if they're in the local language, through the steps of taking the samples, separating it, bagging it, labeling it, this sort of thing. Over here, we're getting across the concept, well, if you see your neighbor spreading 1 bag of fertilizer on his field, does that mean 3 is going to be better? Not necessarily, of course. So the concept is, follow some guidelines, not just looking at what either you've done in the past, your forefathers have done, or what your neighbor has done, but looking at soil test information, and probably in most cases we can look at cutting back on these fertilizer rates, which of course lead to more salts and add to the salt problem in irrigation water. And there's some pictures about proper composting and manure and burning, which is the thing we're discouraging these types of things. But there's many pages of this. I just picked out a few for you to take a look at. Okay.
Before you go away from composting, could you expand a little bit on what is vermicomposting?
It's using worms. Worms.
What does that mean?
Well, they add worms, then they chew the organic matter and then excrete it as a digested or much more readily available for plants. So it's a kind of like well, I don't know. All composting is organic, but it's the aid of a living organism to do the composting, other than just bacteria. I'm just going to take my sweater off. I'm getting warm now. Getting me all worked up here. Okay. There we go. So that's the Rajiv Gandhi story. Now I'll move on to Tasty Bite. These are not in order of priority or time spent by any means, but just the way it's going to fall out here. But Tasty Bite is in the south, well, I guess in the central, a little bit off the west coast, about 4 hours from Mumbai inland. And it's a partner that we came across. I think they've got affiliation with the campus here, and we just met through various means. So they wanted some help in terms of establishing demonstration farm gardens for their area farmers, trying this kind of idea of this corporate social responsibility of improving the lot of their community. So we did that. A couple of issues there. Certainly one is, I'll show you in a minute, but this is a dry area. So looking at water conservation, you'll notice there's a trickle irrigation pipe there. And then this is some technology. We had some assistance from a horticulturist from Punjab Agriculture University, who actually was here on campus for a year. So he came up with some strategies for this intense spacing, and this was up there. As these grew, these were trellised, and they were all hung, of course, but this is in the planting stage. But the key here is saving water. And not only is it dry, but then when it rains, you might get 10 or 20 inches in a day, so you've got to have a way to get it off. So we have these ditches to move off the surplus water when those types of things happen. And I just want to show you about the rainfall now. Mumbai is here. You see that's up in this, 800 centimeter range type of situation. But as you move inland, Pune is about here, give or take, and you see that drops down a number of categories in terms of precipitation. So even though it's only maybe 100 miles from Mumbai, it might be a quarter of the rainfall, and again, it's not very reliable. So even in the rainy season, they have to have access to irrigation, and it's not just the dry season where they need to be ready to irrigate. Some challenges there. One of the things was the soil is very shallow. You drive in a stake to support the crops. Maybe you can go in a foot or so, then you hit this rock. You can kind of see pieces of it here, shattered bedrock material. And also you see this white, that's not just sun, that's actual salt on the surface. So a lot of this water is very saline. So as you keep using saline water, running it through more fertilizer, it gets more saline. And if there's not enough rainfall during the year to leach away the salts, then that just problem that doesn't go away. Moving on to the ACMF partnership with Tata. They're active, Tata in particular is active up in Jharkhand, which is up in the northwest near Calcutta. I got a map in a minute, but they're looking at these are what they call tribal areas, or tribal people, and these are tribal people here. You see traditionally, we broadcast the rice, then go through it, these oxen and these plow, and just kind of thin it that way. Looking at here is a drum seeder, getting the paddy flat, dropping the seeds so they're in rows and they're easier to manage that way. So this is a direct seeding method. This is broadcasting and thinning it with animal traction. And in terms of the area, this is up here, Jharkhand. Again, you have to go into Calcutta and take a train out here. This is all considered tribal areas. Again, the income is quite low. As you can see, these areas is among the lowest in India, so a big need area. So right about there is where this picture was taken. And one of the things they did as part of their corporate social responsibility program is set up these cultural centers. There's all kinds of different tribal peoples there. There's inside they had displays for many of the different tribal groups. I gave a talk here in this room, and I'm actually probably talking right now. But anyway, this is they brought in all their NGOs that have worked with agriculture to just talk about soil and testing and health and that sort of thing, health of the soil. So it was a big effort on their part to coordinate all this, and it's something that they're doing for their local communities. Moving on to the Mahindra. Besides Asim, who knows what Samriddhi? Anybody know what Samriddhi means? It's a Hindi word. Okay, can you know?
Prosperity.
Prosperity, yes. Prosperity. So that's their new program, and it's kind of what got us involved in the whole concept over there. First of all, Mahindra is a very strong company in India and worldwide. This is a picture. I was out in Pune area. This is the dealer. He's a second generation dealer. This is a second generation farmer, and then they're showing pictures of their predecessors selling a tractor. This fellow's father and this fellow's father. I think this is him actually here, but they still have those old tractors there. So again, very strong ties. This is up in Gujarat, a dealership. We're taking a picture, and I'm in the picture there. But this is where we did a lot of our training and filming of our videos. So very, very strong support, and also again, very tight-knit group in these dealerships. So why this Samriddhi program? Much of the land, about 3/4 of it in India, is farmed by small and marginal farmers, meaning relatively poor farmers. So it's a big part of the acreage and big part of the numbers. Some of the major crops, I'll just let you skim through them yourself while I keep talking. But again, a lot of these are kind of specialty crops. But you see here, number 2, rice, wheat are the staple crops, and particularly up in Uttar Pradesh and out in the Calcutta area, West Bengal, these areas big in wheat and rice rotation. But as you go in the south, there's a lot of the tea and pepper, ginger, all this sort of thing. There's more specialty crops, tend to be more in the southern part of the state. And you see they're number 3 in the world tractor market in terms of buying tractors. So again, back why is Samriddhi? If you look at this scenario for rain-fed corn, if you look at average yield 800 kg, 6 rupee per kg price, this going down the line here for a farmer with 4 acres, his annual income is 9,600 rupees. For a month, that's 800 rupees, which translates to about $17. So for a family of 5, of course, that's not going to go very far. So what happens often, they migrate to the city. Usually the man goes to the city, might get a job as a coolie or a taxi driver, maybe up that income to 4,000 rupees per month, send the money back home to the village, maybe get there once a year for a few weeks or something. But again, the living conditions are very poor. About 60% or so of the people in the big cities live in these slums. I'll just give you a picture of, this is Mumbai. I think this is from the Four Seasons, but anyway, Mumbai is basically high rises with a lot of slums in between. This is all the the slum settings here are very common. Also, the other thing you see all the time in Mumbai is construction, because it's constantly growing. And I think I read once where there's like 5,000 people a day or something like that move into the city. So it's an incredible influx of people, and it's just very difficult to find place for them all. So looking at the tractor scenario, if you look over the past 50 years or so, there was about 5 million tractors sold in total, which seems like a big number, but if you think about 50 years and the number of farmers there, which are about over 500 million people engaged in agriculture, about 130 million families. So again, that's not a big number if you look at it that way. For example, the last I think it was in March last year, I was in the office there with Mahindra, and all of a sudden there was explosions going off and stuff, and I thought, well, you know, either a terrorist attack or something was going on, but it was fireworks because they crossed this 100,000 sales the first time as 1 lakh in the Hindi language, so 1 lakh, and then they had all kinds of 1 lakh parties and paraphernalia, but it was a big landmark for them. So rather than set a goal of 110 this year, they set it for 200, of course, which is unattainable, but you know, they're setting their goal high. But the point is here, this is the biggest company selling 100,000 when you've got, you know, 500 million farmers, so it's still not a real saturated market in terms of tractor usage. You look at this is, I took this from the Samradi promotion here, but this is how they look at it. These are competitive tractor dealers. They're looking at selling tractors to various farmers. You look at a profit per tractor. The idea of this whole Samradi program is looking at a tractor, then looking at the mechanization that goes with it, and then the crop production from that, and providing overall solutions in both mechanization and, again, seed, fertilizer, these types of things, and looking at profit per farmer versus profit per tractor. Of course, this means 2 or 3 times a year having interaction with farmers. Here it might be once every 5 or 10 years. So again, the model being support the farmer, make him more profitable. It's good for the farmer, good for the community, and also in the long term be good for the business because they'll be more in a position to buy a tractor. If you look at another component here, how the tractors are used, there's a big gap basically when the crop is standing. If you've ever driven on the roads in India, which I've done way too much of, you'd swear every tractor is on the road. But that's haulage over here is what the term for just pulling things with carts and buggies with tractors. So you notice by the number of stars here, that's second most common to land preparation, helping with harvest, post-harvest. These are where they use the tractor. We're trying to look at, you know, some of these intercultural operations, things like weeding, irrigating, you know, fertilizer applications, anything to use the tractor and make it more of a year-round tool for the farming operation. So essentially, again, the concept is tractor alone versus adding these implements, providing solutions, kind of a synergy between this knowledge for the product of the tractor, or the engineering side, and also the agronomy side, or growing the crop. So that's where Mahindra came in with essentially 0 level of expertise in agriculture side, but they've been working on that, and that's, again, certainly one of the things that we were there helping with.
I think that's important to emphasize. This big tractor company has no agriculturalists on their staff.
Mm-hmm. Right. So as far as their tractors, this again, in case you can't guess, is me sitting on a 15-horse tractor. It's a very small tractor. It sells for about, I think, 1.2 or 4 lakh or something, like about $3,000. So they're trying to get something smaller that more farmers could afford, small landholders. Of course, it's not much good if you have a real hilly area or real heavy soil, but it can have a lot of function. And to go along with it, then they make a wagon or a cart that goes size to the, you know, for the proper size for this particular model. On the upper end is these Arjun tractor, the 60 horsepower. The biggest sellers are usually in that 30 to 40 horsepower range, but again, they're seeing a big market potential here, and they've introduced this in a couple areas of the country just to see how it flies. Okay, try again. All right.
John, can I ask a question? What about in the U.S.? What are they marketing in the U.S. in terms of size?
Yeah, in the U.S. they're mostly like compact, you know, homeowner, garden, handyman kind of tractors. They're not real agriculture, but not lawnmowers, but that size in between, kind of like the John Deere compact. You know, you see a lot of around that probably a 20 to 28 horsepower diesel, you know, gentleman farm kind of tractor with or without loaders and that sort of thing. So the goal of the Samradi program is to impact the lives of 10 million farmers by 2020. I used this term a few times, and I want to just go back and just spend a minute with it. Corporate social responsibility, or CSR, is a big thing in India and also other parts of the world, but just the definition I kind of liked for it was obligation beyond that required by law and economics for a firm to pursue long-term goals that are good for society, and the continuing commitment by a business to behave ethically and contribute to economic development by improving the quality of life of the workforce and their families, as well as that of the local community and society at large. So again, particularly the Mahindra program, the Tasty Bite program, both from corporate side, looking at not only helping themselves in the long term, but helping the community that surrounds them in the short term as well. So a Samradee Center is just a tractor dealership that's been transformed basically to add a lab in some area to meet with farmers. This is just a picture of one. They're not real fancy places. Usually if you had a building like this, you'd take like one room off of a corner and make a lab out of it. And I'm not sure if I got any better pictures coming up for that. This is when we're at about the 30 level for Samradee centers. You see they're pretty well spread around India, although the heaviest concentration is down here in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, this area of the country. Very few out here in some of these tribal areas, and then also Rajasthan traditionally is kind of a weaker area. I'll just back up. There's really zero row cropping out here in these northeastern states, so really no involvement out there at all. So what are the things that happen at the Samradee Center? Certainly testing soil and water, the first one. Counseling, which means going out and advising groups of farmers. This is the equivalent of like a field plot or a demonstration plot near the Samradee Center. Agri-clinic means working with individual farmers and then taking it to the village and then having their neighbors see these types of activities and hopefully going forward with it. Visiting agriculture institutions, and Mahindra has MOUs with at least 10 different institutions in India where they can either call on a faculty member to come and provide their expertise or take farmers to the institution to look at some plots or maybe attend a field day or something. This toll-free helpline, tech interface, farmers library, I got a couple of slides coming on those. So starting with the testing, again, this is basically looking at, the idea is not to test to put fertilizer on, but in a lot of cases it's to test so they can reduce the inputs of fertilizer or know how much organic material might be needed to meet the application. So timing, these sorts of things are all part of the recommendation process. As far as my involvement with them, these are kind of four of the highlights here. The first one is the soil testing program. Of course, most of you aren't soil people, but they're very common in the US for probably the last 50 years at least, but I took a few over there and it was innovative, so they took it and actually made it into, took it to a shop and duplicated it and distributed it to the centers. It's just a kind of a scientific way. This pipe is half open, so you push it in the ground, twist it, bring it up, knock the sample into a pail, and you go on. So it's very quick, and it's been done all the way, and you can control the depth with markings here. So that's one of the things we introduced. This video, this is about a 2.5-hour video made in the local language so that we shoot the actual taking of the sample, the preparation of the sample, what the different glassware is for, how to start an instrument, how to run it, how to shut it off. All that's included so that if they come to the training, maybe you don't remember everything or can't understand me very well or something, they can go back and listen to the local language version of it. So that's been real popular. This is a methods manual for all the tests that we were promoting and running there, both for soil and water, and then also forms for both submitting the sample and for getting the results back to the farmer. So again, these were the things that I would say Mahindra was the most happy with in terms of our USAID or Wisconsin inputs or outcomes from the project. This is just some pictures now of the staff training, and in general, this is a lab in the background here, but if you ask for 10 people, there's going to be 20, because it is India after all, so there's always a lot of people, so we tend to have to improvise a lot to find enough space, so we just moved out into the shop, when we could. This is just a titration test, so there's more room, and invariably it's quite hot as well, so we try to just take advantage of different opportunities. This is another example where we had probably 30 people in a room, maybe the size of from here to that wall. So we went outside and then did the lecture out there, and then when we can get outside to have a little breathing space. Some things require electrical power, like some of the instruments, so then we do it in smaller batches and kind of rotate. So it's kind of always a little bit of a scramble finding an opportunity to do that. This is one of the places where we had a really nice meeting room, one of the very few actually, where it was actually air conditioned and quite nice. So we did several trainings here, but I'm just showing it here. These are the guys, well, they obviously knew their picture was taken, but looking at this video, what we do is review the video, go do the work in the lab, and then come back and then follow up with questions and more discussion of things that I saw from previous trainings. I just had a list and kind of put them on the board and ask them different things and get the discussion going. And usually someone in the group had a little experience to get them up there and let them lead them through an answer to a particular question. Again, ideally we had small groups, give them hands-on opportunity. This is an example of a guy balancing a balance. There's a bubble on the back to make sure it's level, and this is some pipetting technique here. Then toward the very end, I mean the very, very end, like my last week, they ordered 3 atomic absorption units, one for each of their major zones, and I went up to Gujarat to do a training on micronutrient testing. Again, this is, I don't know, it's probably 120 in that room at the time, but anyway, I was standing back here taking the picture, but this is the lady. When I first came there, she was brand new, and she didn't know anything about soil testing or anything else, but she was at this site where we wanted to do the filming, and she was very interested and very sharp, so she picked up on everything. So I used her for all the videos and a lot of the training. She's very, just like a 30-year experienced teacher. She's very, I don't know how to word. She's just really good at making her points and sticking to the text, not getting off on tangents and everything. So she got to be real popular with Mahindra because of this whole training. And again, she's basically the star of the video as well. And then once we got the labs out there, of course, we can't just assume they're doing fine on their own, because in a lot of cases they won't be if they got new equipment, new people with no experience. So we sent out these, did a homogeneous soil to the different labs and asked them to run it 3 times, send me the results, and I reported to them. Like here's them, I just highlighted one that's, you see all the other results are 0.2 or 3, and this one's 3.5. So if you look at that, you're going to see, are they 10 times off, or did they move a decimal place in their own point? So these are the kind of things, if you haven't worked with soils, you don't know if a number of 0.3 is normal or if a 3 is normal. So I mean, if you work with it, you know that the decimal place probably belongs here, fits in nicely. But again, just a matter of experience. And here's the pH. You see also 9.4. So this lab probably had a little more work to do than some of the others. But I took the names off here for this slide, but I individually send them an email with the results and then suggestions on how they can improve. That was for pH and some of the other tests. This is for carbon, phosphorus, potassium. And again, you see some of these numbers are real low. What probably happened here is either the instrument, the bulb wasn't working and they didn't realize it, got a real low number, or they didn't put in the proper dilution factors when they made the calculations. All these are understandable mistakes. These could be a decimal place thing again, you see. So again, all this takes experience to know when there's an issue. But the idea is if you have a standard soil in your lab, you run it each day with your farmer samples, and if the standard soil comes out correctly, you can kind of assume your farmer soil is going to be correct. Whereas if it doesn't, then you should stop and not report the results. Whereas if you don't have a standard soil, you don't know if this farmer's soil is 1 or 34 because you've never tested it before. So you have to have some kind of a reference material to run with the samples. Group counseling, again, this is having maybe an agriculture expert come in and talk about a particular crop, or bring them into a seminar setting. Again, I mentioned they got 10 universities involved in that program. every once in a while I push this and nothing happens, Ken. There we go. All right, they're nationwide. The focus is on 8 crops, and is also Mahindra's focus. You see them there. Mostly I was working with wheat and rice, and to some extent a little bit with potatoes, but they're interested in introducing more pulses because, of course, the vegetarian environment, and also soybeans, another legume with protein levels. And a lot of these things are, simple and can be quite low cost in terms of improvements in productivity for farmers. This is a vine crop, and it's hard to see here, but there's a wire strung across here, and they're trellising up these vines up on the wire, taking advantage of vertical space and getting the fruit off the ground. This is an example of a flood irrigation field where this is the main channel. Traditionally, they open this up with a hole and let the water in. These are just some simple siphon tubes to avoid all that extra labor, move the water over the dike with a siphon process instead of opening the channel itself.
John, can I ask a question? And not just in terms of looking at production, are they also looking at nutritional value and biofortification of crops when they do these?
Well, the San Bernardino people, they're looking at the productivity from the standpoint of yield, and then the market value, the nutritional value. They're not really looking at that other than taking literature that would exist from health services in terms of what crop would be more nutritional, but not looking at impact of let's say a fertilizer treatment on the nutritional value of the crop. Not specifically. We don't even do that here, to be honest with you. It's kind of a next step up the line. Field days are great, and both Ken and I were at field days. One is at Punjab, and this is a Punjabi farmer here sitting on a New Holland tractor, and you can read that sign for yourself, because I'm not gonna. But it's about 100,000 farmers come in every day. It's greatly attended. You see there's a couple of implements. There's a cultivator, or a row maker there, and a seeder. Kind of the farmers are standing around here, but again, trying to add this second component of making the tractors more year-round useful in terms of the farming operation. And this is a fellow sitting on his pile of seed. What happens there is the university grows seed. Like now they've been growing it during they just have been growing it during the rainy season. That would be rice, so they'd process that now and then sell it in the spring field day in March, so that farmers can take it back and sell it and plant it on their farms. And then the wheat crop would be just the reverse. They'd sell that in the fall field day after growing it during the winter season. So again, farmers love getting this good quality seed from the university. You see that sign there, Ken? Lovely ice cream. You probably were there on that corner with me once.
Yeah, you told me not to buy it.
I didn't say it was good. It was lovely. And this is just one of these big farmer meetings. There, these people in the front row are honored farmers, where they get some productivity awards, and I was at a couple of those events too. Okay, Mr. Clicker, here we go. And this is just example again. Each of the San Bernardino centers, of which there's a little over 100 now, has a field demonstration site associated with it. Here they're demonstrating rice transplanting, with a mechanical instrument. This came from Korea, and Mahindra got it and worked up a relationship with the company and sells it to their sites, also rents it out. This is just seed treatment for insect problems. System of rice intensification, that's kind of a big buzzword around the world, but essentially what it is just best management practices for rice. And you see some of the improvements here in the root, and also the productivity of the hills and more tillers. Again, it's somewhat, we'd probably call it common sense, but it's planting things in a row, using proper seed, these sorts of things. And then when the farmers learn this, they like to take it back to their village. This is a couple of San Bernardino people here going back, following up with farmers, helping them with pest problems, monitoring the yields, and getting a check on their productivity enhancement from following the program. One of the things they really like about the program is they developed this special relationship or bonding with farmers. Again, here's up in Gujarat. This is between crops. You can see it's pretty dry and bare here, but is meeting with the farmers, talking about the importance of knowing your fertility. Again, I'm sitting there in the background, this is Hamani, the lady I was telling you about that does a lot of the training with the, in terms of the video. We're talking about how to take a sample, and here's the traditional way with this hole versus the probe that I showed you before. And this is a slide that actually got on my President Obama thing I'll show you in a minute, but this is showing the soil test probe training and using the traditional, the hoe and then the knife just to take a slice off of E-wedge. So this is much slower. However, like if it's real dry, this probe isn't going to go in very well, whereas the hoe, you can pretty much beat that into anything as long as you got enough energy and patience. So it's they still both have their place. Okay, so again, this is just showing farmers having been taken to an agricultural institution for visiting with some researchers, some plastic mulch here, showing some improved techniques. And each of the centers has a library. This farmer is just holding up a library, but they try to have different reading materials so if they come in, you can look at some reference material in addition to visiting with the staff from the center. Just some pictures give an idea of some of the strategies, preparing the land, soaking the seed, such different ways of planting rice. This is the mechanized planting, putting the plants in row, looking at this SRI concept, and again, just all around the best management practices for improving rice production. I mentioned this helpline, but in all the states they have certain times that they use for being available to call in and ask questions about their crop to the experts that Mahindra has hired, and then they accumulate these and they'll play them back the next day, kind of like a highlight of the previous day's questions. On the internet or on their website, there's all these things are available, production practices for over 50 crops, weather, prices, market availability, these types of things. So all those are parts of the internet site. And this just give an idea how they look at the roadmap from soil testing on through the practices and et cetera. There's a lot of promotion of the program. And then lastly, they introduced this award to farmers to properly thank or reward farmers that did the best job of improving their productivity. So first prize of this was 25,000 rupee plus trophy, and then it drops to 5 and on down the line. But again, this is some of the centers do this for both the kharif for the rainy season and the rabi season, dry season crops. Some just do it for one. But there might be as many as 25 to 75 farmers in this. But then the Mahindra people, of course, have to go and work with each of these people as well as monitor their yields. So it's a big job and spend a lot of time in the field. So this is new in the last 2 years now. Again, it was launched in '09 for the 2 crops, so are some of the things I just mentioned. Typically, they like to see at least 10% as an increase in productivity to be considered successful, and often it was running more than that, 12 to 18 or more. So again, it's a big thing, and I know we just got an invitation to a thing in Delhi in the 21st where they're going to have more of a national program to award farmers, and have ministers of agriculture come in. So this thing is still growing. Again, I'd hate to tell you how many times I got hindered marks on my head and flowers, but it was a lot over the course of the 2 years. But this is just an example. This was a brand new center, and since I was there, I came and maybe I see, what is that, breaking a coconut on the threshold? I about broke my hand doing it, I tell you that. It was pretty hard. And then after I got inside, I had some media people. We were meeting with some farmers and just talking about the value of this new lab to the farmers in that community. There's some quotes from the farmers. Of course, they're going to say good things, and how very rarely they have opportunity to work with agricultural professionals, and they really appreciated the lab and also the advice given by the San Bernardino Center. And again, when I first got there was about 10 centers. I went to 30 and then 75. Now I think there's a little over 100, with the goal of, this goal is kind of a sliding goal. It's really no way of knowing where it's going to end up. There's 1,000 dealerships or more, but of course not all of them are that lucrative or profitable that could really support or justify a lab. So my guess is it might get into the 200 or so range, and then once you get beyond that, they could start sharing samples, between centers, because it's quite a challenge getting enough expertise involved to run these labs, and if it's so difficult at 100, it'd be very difficult at 1,000. Okay, go ahead. All right, now I'm going to show you my President Obama pictures here. Well, when I was there in, well, I don't know what it was, maybe spring of '09, I got a call from the USAID office in Delhi. They said, "Oh, we've got a very high-profile visitor, so we'd like to bring down to see one of your San Release centers." I said, "Okay," but can't tell you who it is though. So all right, so I mentioned that to the Mahindra people, and of course everybody got all excited. They were calling Pune to get this farm all set for the visit, and Gandhi and I were actually going out there on the weekend to do this, and then Friday night I get a call back. Oh, no, that was the next day. I went into the office and I said, well, I asked them, I said, well, there's this higher profile visit. Oh, you mean Hillary Clinton? So what had happened, of course, they wouldn't tell me, but somebody had called the head of Mahindra, and he trickled it down to the whole system. So everybody in the building knew who was coming, and I was supposed to be keeping it a secret. But anyway, by the time the next day came, it was all canceled. She came to Mumbai, but not to there. But this time, the president was there in November. I left in October, of course, so I missed this. But there's a agriculture fair at one of the colleges in South Mumbai, probably not too far from the seam stomping grounds down there. But anyway, this was the booth that was there, and you can see this is a rice transplanter, soil testing, some lab equipment, and that's that picture of that soil probe I showed you before. So and you can see this is the president, some AID people. This is the head of Mahindra farm equipment sector, and one farmer they brought in. I guess they said only one Mahindra person was allowed into this thing because of security, and that was the president of the company here. But so I would like someone to say, what do you think he's saying, pointing at me there? The only thing I can think of is that, did this guy get furloughed, is what my question is. But anyway, you can pick your own words for that. Anyway, that's the picture he was looking at, and it's got Wisconsin and, of course, AID on there. So, that is it. Anybody have any questions that Asim can answer?
Some of the
Yes.
class problems and apologies for the early departure.
No, that's thanks for coming. Go ahead.
Are you working with Mahindra to developing like cheap implements for plowing techniques that would improve the soil structure that we're seeing in soil, like chisel plowing for the or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of development work. Like for example, some of the NGOs are working on simple and cheap implements for either tractor operation, animal, or hand. Just ways of mechanizing things, either for dropping seed, dropping fertilizer, or filling in manure, or what have you. It's a lot of work going on there. With the Mahindra people, they've got 15 horsepower on up, so they've got a pretty wide range of equipment size because of the horsepower thing. But chisel plowing is mostly moldboard plowing at this point, but there is some chisel plowing. But a lot of people just don't plow it out, just do cultivation and have all the residue removed, either for fodder or burned or something like that. Yes.
So what kind of farmers end up using some of the centers? Does it tend to be the poorest of the poor farmers, or the sort of middle income, higher income farmers?
Okay, what farmers use the centers? Well, what their goal is with these programs, they try to get 50% of the people, like in these Saman program, as Mahindra tractor owners, 30% as a competitive tractor owner, and 20% not a tractor owner. So, say, 20% would be, so far down the marginal scale they wouldn't even have access to a tractor. Maybe 80% are in the mechanized side of things. Doesn't mean they're wealthy farmers, but just a little bit up from the very bottom. Yes.
I just was thinking, I mean, I grew up in that northeastern area where there are no tractors, or so, I mean, part of it is field size and structure of fields, because you can't use a tractor if your field is this wide and that long, and
Right.
you have 15 of them spread over a hectare
Yeah.
because of the way you inherited it. So,
Right.
I mean, use of tractors will have to, I mean, there has to be a whole change in the land tenure system in order to make tractors viable. And in Gujarat, it's fine because you have these billionaire landowners who can
Yeah.
buy all the land and kick all the poor people off,
Right.
and can, you know, and then Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh, the same thing.
Mhm.
So I mean, I just was curious, is this promoting a new form of land barons by presenting tractors to all these people because they have to consolidate and structure the land differently? Or how is that impact being assessed, if at all?
Yeah, well, I think in the long term, out of those, 500 million farmers, the percentage with tractors is very minuscule, and I think what they're doing also is looking at ways to, either share, like buy as a group or like a co-op, or have someone that buys it as a business and then does farming, tillage practices or whatever for multiple farmers. But yeah, like you said, if you've got 1 hectare and then you've got 3 or 4 children, you can't keep splitting that hectare forever because it gets size of a table at some point. So yeah, it's the small landholders really don't have much place for tractor ownership. But the other thing they're doing, of course, is looking at these cheaper. They got the Tata car, which was supposed to have been a hot thing. Now they got the Uraj tractor, which is again affordable. But even so, if you've still only got a quarter of an acre, it doesn't make any sense to own a tractor. Oh, man.
So you mentioned briefly about getting farmers together in cooperatives. Is there any sort of concerted effort to develop this kind of social support structure or social system, I guess, to make farming more profitable or more stable?
Well, there is, these corporates are doing it. I don't know that the government is, but certainly some of these corporates are, like, well, the Rajiv Gandhi thing, bringing the women farmers. They also have men farmer groups, but our project work with the women. These Mahindra, they have these farmer clubs. I didn't mention that, but there are farmer clubs within that too. So again, the idea is to work together, and maybe some of these clubs could, share a tractor or a plow or whatever it might be in these cases. But as far as is it, sweeping the country at this point, no, but it's, kind of a new concept, and I think they're trying to scale it out.
Thank you very much.